Story 1, The Red Dust Chase. Part 1, The Road Through the Fog. The A66 stretched out like a scar under the moonlight, a ribbon of damp asphalt that carved through the sleeping wilds of Cumbria. The fog was so thick it pressed against the windshield like wet wool. Jack Hawthorne squinted through the smear of grime on the glass, his knuckles pale on the steering wheel. The dashboard clock blinked 3:12. He hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour. No gas stations. No lights. Just the deep, suffocating grey. The hum of the 12-wheeler was the only sound left in the world, a low mechanical heartbeat that felt almost comforting. He was hauling classified cargo from IF Spadeadam to Liverpool docks. No questions asked. No paperwork to sign. Just a coded manifest and a promise of triple pay. The rain had stopped an hour ago, but the air still smelled of rust and old diesel. Jack leaned back in the seat, rubbing the scar along his temple, the one that always burned when he was overtired. He told himself this job was a distraction. From the breakup. From the house that no longer had her voice echoing through it. From everything that used to mean home. He reached for the thermos beside him. Empty. The fog thickened until it looked like the headlights were cutting through milk. Then, suddenly, a splash of color. A red Vauxhall Corsa sat diagonally across the road, hazard lights blinking weakly. Jack slammed the brakes. Tires screamed. The truck skidded sideways, stopping just a few feet short of impact. He cursed under his breath, pulled on his high-vis jacket, and climbed down. The air outside was colder than he expected, sharp, metallic. The kind of air that carried sound strangely far. The car's passenger door was open. The interior light glowed faintly through the mist. He stepped closer. There was blood. A thin trail running from the open door down onto the tarmac, then vanishing under the fog. Jack's pulse kicked. "Hello," he called out. "Anyone hurt?" Silence. He leaned into the car. The smell hit him first, copper and something else, sweet and wrong. The backseat was soaked dark red. Drops still clung to the torn leather like dew. He reached toward the glove box, but something caught his eye. The boot was half open. 3 duffel bags were inside, military green, the kind he'd seen on base years ago. One of them had ripped open. Inside, beneath the torn strap, was a hand, pale, stiff, tattooed with a faded Royal Marines insignia. Jack stumbled back, bile rising in his throat. Then, a sound. A sharp metallic click somewhere behind him. He turned just as a gunshot split the fog. The bullet whined past his ear and blew out the truck's side mirror. Jesus! He dropped behind the car door, peering through the fog. A silhouette moved near the ditch. Large, limping, shoulders hunched. A man's voice rasped out, not a threat, not a shout, but a plea. "Don't let them take the bags." Jack froze. The man staggered into view, wild red hair, eyes rolling white in the headlights, one arm dragging something heavy. He wore a tattered camo jacket smeared with mud. The rifle in his hand looked older than both of them. Ronan Mad Dog McBride. Jack hadn't seen him since Basra, a legend among the worst sort of soldiers, the kind that came home but never really left. "Ronan?" Jack's voice cracked. "What the hell are you doing out here?" The man dropped to his knees, panting, the rifle slipping from his grip. "They are coming. Don't look at them. Just run." Jack took a step forward. "Who's coming?" Ronan's head snapped up. His pupils were blown wide. "You think you're hauling gear, Hawk? You think this is a delivery?" He pointed toward the truck. "That's bait." A tremor ran through the ground. So faint Jack almost thought it was his heartbeat. Then the fog shifted, not blown by wind, but pulled. Like something huge had drawn breath beneath the road. The hair on the back of his neck rose. Ronan staggered upright, grabbed Jack by the jacket. They followed the convoy from the base. "You've got to burn it." Another sound cut him off. An engine revving, distant but growing fast. Jack turned. The Corsa, The same wrecked one, suddenly coughed to life, headlights flaring bright through the fog. There was no one behind the wheel. "Move!" Ronan shouted. Jack sprinted for the truck. The Corsa's tires screeched, engine screaming as it barreled forward. Jack dove into the cab, jammed the key into ignition, slammed the pedal. The 12-wheeler lurched forward, gears grinding. The red car accelerated, closing fast. Ronan was running after it, waving his arms. "Stop! Don't let it hit!" The impact was like thunder. The truck jolted forward as the Corsa slammed into its rear. Fire exploded through the fog, a column of flame twisting high, painting the night blood orange. Jack's head hit the steering wheel. When his vision cleared, everything was burning. He kicked open the door and stumbled into the road, coughing. The Corsa was gone, nothing but shrapnel and flame. The duffel bags had vanished. And from within the rolling smoke came the shapes, 3 figures, tall and featureless, walking slowly through the mist. Hazmat suits, hoods sealed, visors black. They didn't speak. They didn't hurry. They just looked. One of them knelt by the place where Ronan had fallen. The others turned toward Jack. He staggered backward, nearly slipping on the slick tarmac. "Who are you?" he yelled, voice hoarse. No answer. The figures grabbed Ronan's body by the arms and dragged it backward into the fog. The fire crackled louder, swallowing their outlines. When Jack tried to follow, there was nothing left but silence, and a smear of blackened tar where the Corsa had burned. By dawn, the police had cordoned off the site. The constable, young, polite, exhausted, told him they'd found no wreckage, no blood samples, no trace of another vehicle. "Are you sure you didn't dream part of this, sir?" Jack laughed, hollow. Dreams don't break mirrors. But even he couldn't explain the part that kept replaying in his mind, the moment the ground trembled, like something enormous shifting beneath the fog. He didn't sleep that day. He drove the empty rig back to Liverpool and quit the job before sunset. For 2 weeks, the world stayed quiet. He almost convinced himself none of it had happened. Until the parcel arrived. No return address. Just his name, written in block capitals. Inside, a small velvet pouch. And inside that, wrapped in gauze, a human finger, shriveled and grey. On the knuckle, a faded Royal Marines tattoo. The same as the hand in the duffel bag. Jack dropped it. The finger rolled across the floor and stopped against his boot. That night, as the wind rattled the window, he thought he heard a whisper from the hall, a breath drawn through fog, low and steady, like the road itself was exhaling. Part 2, The Ghost Convoy. The rain came 2 weeks later, hammering the streets of Liverpool like nails. Jack Hawthorne sat in his flat above the docks, the city's sodium lights bleeding through the blinds. The velvet pouch lay on the table in front of him, still sealed in an evidence bag he'd bought online. He hadn't touched it again. But he hadn't thrown it away either. The TV muttered low in the background, a muted news report about chemical leaks near the Spade Atom test range. They said it was minor. Contained. The kind of story that disappeared after 2 days. Jack's eyes didn't leave the bag. The Royal Marines tattoo on that finger, a dagger through a globe, wasn't just any unit insignia. It belonged to 42 Commando, the same platoon he'd served with. The same unit Ronan McBride had been dishonorably discharged from. The same men he'd left behind. He took a long drink from the bottle on the counter, letting the whiskey burn through his chest. The rain against the window almost masked the sound, the faint thump from the hallway outside. He froze. Another thump. Slow. Deliberate. He crossed to the door, every step careful. The corridor outside was dim, one bulb flickering overhead, the hum of rain echoing through the stairwell. No one there. He was about to close the door when he noticed something at his feet, a smear of red dust. Not rust. Not paint. Fine, iron-colored grit, identical to what coated the Corsa that night. He stared at it, heartbeat spiking. Then he looked up, and saw the faintest impression of boot prints, leading down the stairs toward the street. He followed. By the time he reached the street, the rain had nearly stopped. The fog was back, rolling in off the river, thick as milk. His breath came out in sharp white bursts. Down the block, a truck's hazard lights blinked twice. Then off. Then twice again. Jack's rig. He'd parked it 3 blocks away, in a locked yard. No one had the keys. He started walking. Then faster. Then running. The closer he got, the thicker the fog became until it felt like wading through water. The street lamps were just orange halos hanging in grey soup. The gate to the yard was wide open. And the truck's headlights were on. He climbed the steps to the cab, throat dry. The keys were still in the ignition. The interior smelled faintly of diesel and wet earth. There, on the passenger seat, sat a new parcel. Smaller. Wrapped in brown paper, tied with twine. He didn't open it right away. His hands were shaking too hard. Instead, he reached for the radio. Static. Then, a crackle, faint and rhythmic. "Hawk, can you hear me?" He froze. "Ronan?" His voice was barely a whisper. Static swallowed the reply, but for a moment, just one heartbeat, he thought he heard breathing. Slow. Wet. Not human. The headlights flickered. The engine coughed once, twice, then roared to life on its own. Jack lunged for the key, yanking it out. The engine kept running. The fog outside pulsed with the rhythm of the idling engine, like it was inhaling with every reverend. The windshield began to mist from the outside, handprints forming in the condensation. He backed toward the door, but it slammed shut. The radio hissed again. Then the voice returned, calm, low, too clear. "Do not let them open the cargo." "Ronan, where are you?" "Not Ronan." The voice distorted, splitting into layers, a whisper beneath a whisper, human vowels stitched to static. "The cargo was never meant to move. You broke the seal. It knows the way back." Jack's chest went tight. His pulse hammered so hard his vision pulsed with it. "What are you talking about?" The reply came through like a breath on glass, the thing under the dust remembers the road. Every light in the cab flickered out. Darkness swallowed everything but the faint red blink of the hazard lights outside. Then came the sound again, from beneath the floorboards of the truck. A slow, dragging shuffle, like something wet and heavy shifting just below the metal. Jack grabbed the crowbar from behind the seat, wrenching the door open. He tumbled into the fog, boots hitting wet asphalt. The truck kept idling, humming low and steady. He forced himself to look underneath. For a long second, there was nothing. Just dripping rain and the smell of diesel. Then the metal beneath the truck's chassis breathed. Not a figure. Not a shape. Just a ripple, the surface flexing outward as if the steel itself had lungs. Jack staggered backward, eyes wide. The ripple spread, along the truck's belly, up the tires, across the asphalt. The road began to bulge and sink, like something enormous was crawling just beneath it. He turned and ran. By the time he reached the end of the block, the idling engine screamed to redline, then silence. When he looked back, the truck was gone. No skid marks. No wreckage. Only the faint shimmer of red dust swirling in the air before vanishing into the fog. The next morning, 2 detectives came knocking. One wore a suit too expensive for local law enforcement. The other didn't speak at all. They showed him a badge he didn't recognize. "Mr. Hawthorne, your truck was located near the A66 bypass, burned out. No cargo, no remains. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" Jack didn't answer. The older one smiled thinly. "We'll be in touch." When they left, the flat smelled faintly of sulfur. He opened the second parcel. Inside was a memory card and a single slip of paper. On it, written in neat black ink, "You never stop driving." He loaded the card into his laptop. The video that played was shaky, low resolution, dashcam footage from his own truck. Timestamp, the night of the fire. But this time, the camera didn't stop at the explosion. It kept rolling. Through the static and smoke, the lens caught movement, 3 hazmat figures hauling Ronan's body toward the ditch. One of them turned back to face the camera. Not human. The visor's reflection showed no face. Just endless red dust swirling like liquid behind glass. Jack slammed the laptop shut. He didn't sleep that night. Or the next. By the third night, he started hearing the breathing again, slow, patient, rhythmic, rising from beneath the floorboards. The same pulse that once hummed through the engine. He tore up the carpet the next morning. The boards underneath were warm to the touch. When he pulled one loose, a puff of red dust rose from the gap, and beneath, not concrete, but black earth, damp and breathing. He backed away, heart hammering. A voice, faint and hollow, drifted up from the opening. "Jack, don't stop this time." He slammed the board back in place and fled the flat, leaving everything behind. By the time he reached the truck depot that afternoon, he was shaking. He told them he wanted another job, any job, as far north as possible. Scotland. The Highlands. Somewhere the fog didn't reach. The foreman frowned. "You sure you're up for it? You look like you've seen a ghost." Jack forced a smile. "I think I'm being followed by one." That night, as he drove the new rig north along the M6, the fog came again, slow, crawling, filling the mirrors like water seeping under a door. He didn't look back. But in the glow of the dashboard, the dust on his boots shimmered faintly red. And from the back of the truck, under the tarp, something moved once. Then went still. Part 3, The Final Mile. The Highland roads were ghost white under the moon. Jack Hawthorne's new rig, a battered Scania with mud-caked headlights, thundered through the mist like a runaway train. The wind clawed across the asphalt, howling through the canyons of Glencoe, carrying whispers that almost sounded like words. He'd been driving for 20 hours. No radio. No stops. Just the road and the weight in the back. The cargo manifest said geological survey equipment. He didn't believe it. He hadn't believed a manifest since Spade Adam. The air smelled faintly of iron. Jack rubbed the sleep from his eyes. The dashboard clock blinked 3:11, the same time the Corsa had appeared. The same hour the world had torn itself open. He checked the side mirror. The fog behind him wasn't dissipating like fog should. It was following, rolling in thick waves that kept perfect pace with the truck. He pressed harder on the accelerator. The road curved along the cliffside, the valley below invisible in the darkness. A few stone cottages flickered past, windows black, no sign of life. This stretch of the A82 hadn't seen regular maintenance since the 80s. And yet, someone had painted new warning lines along the center. Fresh red, glistening under the headlights like wet blood. Jack felt his chest tighten. He flicked the wipers, tried the radio. Static. Then, a familiar rhythm under the noise. A breath. Slow. Heavy. Patient. He turned it off. The fog thickened until he could barely see the bonnet. He leaned forward, squinting through the smear of condensation, and that's when he saw them, lights ahead. 3 beams, low to the ground, cutting across the mist. Hazmat suits. Again. The figures stood motionless in the middle of the road, blocking the way. Behind them, through the fog, something vast shifted, a silhouette the size of a house, heaving in and out like lungs. Jack's stomach dropped. He slammed the brakes. The rig skidded sideways, tires screeching, the trailer fishtailing wildly. Sparks exploded from the guardrail. The truck came to a stop inches from the edge. The valley below swallowed sound, nothing but endless grey void. The figures started walking forward. Jack fumbled for the ignition, turning the key again and again. The engine wouldn't catch. The battery light blinked red. He reached behind the seat, pulled the crowbar free. His breath fogged the cab window. The air inside the truck felt thicker, heavier, as though the fog itself was seeping through the seams. Then he saw it. Red dust. Rising from the floorboards, curling like smoke. He kicked the door open and jumped down into the cold. The gravel crunched under his boots, only it wasn't gravel anymore. The road was soft. Breathing. A pulse rolled through the ground, traveling under his feet toward the truck. Jack ran to the back, ripped the tarp aside. The cargo hold wasn't full of equipment. It was full of soil. Packed in metal containers, sealed with military stencils, Espadidam Biological Test Series 09. Every container lid was trembling. Jack stumbled back, mind reeling. No. The air grew hotter, metallic. The containers began to hiss, fine streams of red dust leaking from the seals. The dust twisted upward like smoke, coiling into shapes that almost looked human, arms, faces, ribs, all collapsing into vapor. The fog above the road darkened. The figures in hazmat suits stood perfectly still. Then, one by one, they raised their hands to their visors and removed them. There were no faces underneath. Just more dust, swirling in the shape of skulls, hollow eyes glowing faintly amber. Jack staggered backward, gasping. The dust flowed from the containers into the air, spiraling into a column that reached the clouds. The sound it made wasn't quite wind, it was like breath drawn through lungs that spanned miles. The ground beneath him cracked. He turned and ran. The cliffside ahead loomed like a wall. He climbed, slipping on the shale, pulling himself up by frozen roots. The dust storm raged behind him, roaring louder than thunder. Halfway up, he looked back, and saw the truck lift off the road as if on invisible hands, folding in on itself like paper. The lights flickered once, then went out forever. The column of red dust turned toward him. He climbed faster, chest on fire, nails bleeding. When he reached the top of the ridge, he collapsed beside an old stone cairn, a pile of rocks marking some forgotten grave. He pressed his back against it, wheezing, watching the valley fill with rolling crimson fog. Then the voice came again, not from the air, but from inside his head. You carried us once. You'll carry us again. He shook his head violently. Get out of me! But his hands, they were coated in dust, veins darkening beneath the skin. The same warmth he'd felt in the floorboards weeks ago spread up his arms. He grabbed a jagged rock and smashed it against his wrist. The dust bled, glowing faintly red before disappearing. The whisper turned to laughter, 1,000 voices speaking through his own breath. He stumbled to his feet, lurching toward the cairn. There was an old wooden cross embedded at the top, half-rotted but still standing. He gripped it like a lever and pulled. The rocks shifted. Beneath the pile was a small hollow, not earth, but metal. A buried hatch, stamped with faded letters, Test Site 09, Containment Access. His stomach dropped. Jesus Christ. It had never escaped the base. It had spread. The wind howled louder, pulling his hair back. The dust spiraled down the mountainside toward the hatch, drawn like water to gravity. The lids of the containers below burst open completely, pouring red mist into the valley. Jack looked down at his hands. The veins had stopped darkening. They were gone entirely, just faint outlines under translucent skin. He could feel the heartbeat again. Not his own. The Earth's. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. Then he whispered, "If you want a host." He yanked the cross from the cairn and drove it through the hatch's control box. Sparks flared. The ground shuddered. The hatch exploded outward, collapsing the cairn and sending a blast of heat through the air. The light that erupted from beneath was blinding, red, white, alive. When the dust cleared, the valley was silent again. 3 days later, a search team found the wreckage of a truck scattered across the A82 pass. No driver. No remains. Just streaks of red mineral coating the road, which later tests said wasn't any element found on Earth. Local shepherds told reporters they saw fog glowing red over Glencoe that night. They said it sounded like breathing. A month later, a cargo ship docked in Reykjavik received an unmarked container from Liverpool. Inside, geological samples from the Scottish Highlands. Each sealed in glass. Each labeled Project Red Dust. The captain opened one. The crew hasn't been seen since. And sometimes, when the wind cuts down from the north, drivers along the A82 swear they hear an engine in the fog, a 12-wheeler rumbling somewhere behind them, though the road is empty. A whisper follows with the wind. Don't let them take the bags. Story 2, The Nullarbor Phantom. Part 1, The Road Without Shadows. There are places in Australia where the horizon bends. Where the sky is so wide it makes you feel like you're standing on the inside of a glass dome, a tiny figure surrounded by the edge of the world. The Nullarbor Plain was one of them. Riley Rue Callahan drove straight into that emptiness, her rig slicing through the early morning frost like a silver blade. 40 tons of cargo in the back, uranium concentrate sealed in lead drums from Olympic Dam, destination Adelaide Docks. No one else on the road. No towns. Just a single, faded sign sheet passed half an hour ago. Next fuel, 146 kilometers. She checked the clock on the dash. 1:47 a.m. The cab was a cocoon of humming diesel and cold air. She reached for her coffee flask, found it empty, and muttered a curse. Her breath hung in front of her like smoke. Even the heater had given up hours ago. Out here, the night was alive with noises that didn't belong, the dry hiss of wind, the occasional pop of contracting metal, the long, hollow cry of a distant bird. But there were no birds this far inland. Riley had been a trucker for 3 years. Before that, she'd run track, state-level sprinter, back when her legs still felt like they belonged to her. After the accident that ended her career, driving long hauls became the only way she could keep moving. Keep from stopping long enough to remember. The radio was tuned to static. No stations reached this far. She kept her window cracked anyway, letting in the night air. It smelled like dust and something faintly metallic, the scent of baked salt plains cooling after a long day of sun. Then, at the edge of her headlights, a shape flickered across the road. Riley braked hard. Tires screamed, dust spraying in waves. The rig shuddered to a halt. The beam of her headlights caught nothing but swirling red grit. She leaned out the window, listening. Silence. Just as she was about to shift back into gear, her CB crackled. A man's voice, low, distorted, like it was crawling up from underwater. Rue, can you hear me? Her stomach clenched. Nobody called her that except one person, her father. He'd been dead for 10 years. Riley stared at the radio mic, frozen. Turn around, Rue. Don't let them see you. The transmission cut. A faint click echoed through the cab, followed by the sound of heavy breathing, not from the radio, but from the back of the truck. She grabbed the torch from the dashboard and climbed down, boots crunching on frost. The beam cut through the darkness, catching the long silver trailer, still sealed, still intact. Nothing. The desert was utterly silent. And yet, the longer she stood there, the more she realized the silence wasn't empty. It was listening. Something shifted in the dark beyond the headlights, a scrape of metal, a faint tap tap tap. She swung the torch. The light caught an old sign half buried in the sand. Letters eaten by rust. Eucla Roadhouse, 12 kilometers. She hadn't realized she was this close. The place had been closed for 15 years, a relic from when the highway still had life. She climbed back into the cab and started the engine. It coughed once, then settled into its low, comforting growl. Just a quick stop, she murmured. Stretch, fuel check, then straight through. But the words sounded hollow. Even to her. The roadhouse appeared at 2:18 a.m., a ghost against the horizon. Its roof sagged, windows shattered, the old BP sign hanging crooked and half swallowed by rust. The air shimmered faintly with frost. Riley parked beside a row of abandoned pumps, headlights washing over cracked concrete and weeds. The place looked like it had been evacuated mid-shift. Chairs overturned. A vending machine half collapsed in the doorway. She grabbed her torch again, stepped out, and walked toward the service door. Inside smelled like metal and decay. The beam cut across dusty shelves stacked with faded road maps and cans of baked beans that had exploded long ago. A refrigerator hummed faintly in the corner, the power line still connected to something underground. Curiosity tugged harder than fear. She tugged the fridge open. cold vapor spilled out. Inside sat a single can of Red Bull, the old blue and silver design from the 2000s, frozen solid. The label was peeled back at one edge, revealing glassy ice underneath. Except it wasn't ice. It was an eye. A human eye, suspended in the frozen liquid, the optic nerve coiled like string. Riley staggered backward, hand over her mouth. The can clattered onto the floor, splitting open with a brittle crack. The eyeball rolled out, hitting her boot. And then, the loudspeaker above the counter hissed to life. "Rue." The voice was unmistakable. Her father's voice. It was the exact tone he used when she'd fallen from the track fence as a kid, half worry, half command. "Rue, run." Every light in the roadhouse flickered. Riley bolted through the doorway and into the open air. The rig loomed ahead like a lifeline. She sprinted across the lot, gravel spraying behind her. As she grabbed the handle, something moved in the beam of her headlights, three shapes standing by the pumps. They wore heavy mining gear, orange suits smeared with red dust, faces hidden behind cracked respirators. One held a pneumatic drill. Another, a coil of chain. The tallest one raised a hand. It wasn't a threat. It was a wave. Riley froze. The torch trembled in her grip. The drill kicked to life, its metallic scream ripping through the silence. Sparks danced off the ground. The miners began walking toward her. She jumped into the cab, slamming the door. Her hands shook as she turned the key. The engine refused. The miners' boots crunched closer. One lifted a flare and lit it, the red glow painting their masks into demonic shapes. Riley floored the pedal. The truck roared, lurching forward just as the flare hit the windshield. Glass spider-webbed, red light bleeding into the cab. She drove blind through the fog, the drill shriek chasing her until it faded into the distance. Only then did she look in the rearview mirror. Something hung from the back of the trailer, a rubber-gloved hand, fingers curling, gripping the latch. She hit the brakes hard. The hand slid off, disappearing into the dust. Her heart pounded so loud it drowned everything else. For a long moment, she just sat there, forehead against the wheel, whispering her father's name. Then, as the engine idled, the CB crackled again, soft this time, like a whisper through snow. "You can't go home, Rue." "Dad? You brought it with you." The transmission ended with a sound like static, or breathing. Outside, the desert had gone completely still. The fog lifted just enough for her headlights to reach the horizon. In the far distance, the ground shimmered, like heat mirage, and then sank, rippling in a slow wave that rolled across the salt plain toward her. She watched it, frozen, until it vanished beneath the truck. Then, from beneath the floor, came a dull, rhythmic thud. 1, 2. Pause. 1, 2, 3. Like a heartbeat. Part 2, The Phantom Convoy. By sunrise, Riley had driven nearly 80 kilometers without stopping. Her hands were locked around the steering wheel, knuckles white. Every bump in the road made her flinch. The sun bled orange across the desert, painting the horizon in layers of heat. The fog was gone now, but it had left a weight in the air, a strange metallic pressure that made her teeth ache. The radio had gone dead hours ago. No static. No hum. Just silence. The clock on the dash blinked 7:12 a.m. She hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. She didn't dare pull over. The only sound was the hum of the tires and the soft clatter of loose metal from the cargo bay. When she finally spotted a sign for a rest area, she exhaled in relief. The old concrete turnout was cracked and half buried in red sand, but it had a public phone booth and a faded picnic table half eaten by termites. She parked the rig and climbed out, boots sinking slightly in the dust. Her body felt hollow, legs shaky, mouth dry. The heat had arrived fast. It shimmered off the hood of the truck, rippling the air like water. She stumbled toward the phone booth, coin in hand, trying to remember her cousin's number in Port Augusta. The receiver was cold. When she lifted it, there was no dial tone, just breathing. Slow. Deep. Familiar. Rue. she slammed it back down. When she turned, the desert shimmered. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw movement. A dark shape just beyond the truck. Then it was gone. Her throat was tight. She forced herself to look into the cab mirror. The reflection was wrong. Behind her, in the reflection, someone sat in the passenger seat, a shape in a miner's suit, visor fogged. But when she turned, the seat was empty. The air in the cab had changed, hotter, heavier, filled with the faint smell of ozone and earth. She opened the door to step down, and saw footprints. 3 sets. Leading from the highway up to her truck. The same heavy boots she'd seen by the pumps. They ended at her tires. And then disappeared, no turn, no return path. Like the men had sunk straight into the ground. Riley backed away, every nerve on fire. "You're overtired," she told herself. "You're seeing things." She turned the ignition. The engine started on the first try. The radio, too, bursting suddenly with static and a voice underneath. Not her father this time. A woman. "Driver Callahan, this is Olympic Security Dispatch. Confirm your cargo integrity immediately." Riley's stomach dropped. "What? How did you?" "Your trailer registered a breach at 2:23 hours near Eucla. You are advised to stop the vehicle and await inspection." Riley's knuckles tightened. "There's nobody out here." "What breach?" "Containment failure." "Repeat, containment failure. Remain with the vehicle. Do not proceed." The radio crackled, then the woman's tone shifted. "They're already with you, aren't they?" Static. Then silence. Riley stared at the speaker until the hairs on her arms stood straight. In the mirror, the passenger seat shimmered again, dust swelling faintly in the shape of a figure. She threw the rig into gear and floored the pedal. The road cut across the plain like a scar. No trees, no signs, just endless sand. For a long time, there was nothing. Then, the first shadow. A long, thin line stretching across the asphalt ahead, like the shadow of a power line that didn't exist. As she passed it, her radio came alive again, a burst of overlapping voices. "Too hot. Containment lost. Seal the shaft. She's still on the route." The sound made her vision pulse. She could almost feel the vibration behind her eyes. The cargo bay groaned, a low metallic creak. She glanced in the mirror. For half a second, she saw something impossible, movement inside the sealed trailer, pressing against the walls from within. Her stomach turned. "Not real," she whispered. "It's the heat. It's..." A voice cut through her thoughts, clear as daylight. "You left me behind." Her foot slipped off the accelerator. "Dad? You shouldn't have opened the can." The steering wheel jerked hard to the right. The truck veered, gravel spraying from the shoulder. She fought it, muscle straining, bringing it back onto the asphalt. Her father's voice was louder now, coming not from the radio, but the speakers in the cab, like it was part of the engine. "You brought it here." Riley slammed the CB to mute, but the voice didn't stop. "You drove it farther than any of us dared." She gritted her teeth. "You're dead." "You're not." The trailer behind her gave a single, thunderous bang, like something inside had slammed into the wall. The entire rig shuddered. She hit the brakes, jumped out, and ran around the side. The lead-sealed doors bulged outward. A fine mist of pale yellow gas hissed from a seam near the bottom. Her Geiger counter, clipped to the frame for safety, clicked rapidly, the sound rising to a shriek. She backed away. "No, no, no." Then she saw movement in the sand beneath the trailer, faint, but unmistakable. A ripple spreading outward like breath under the surface. The same pattern she'd seen in the distance earlier. Riley climbed back into the cab and hit the throttle. The truck roared forward, kicking up waves of red dust. The clicking of the Geiger counter faded, but the road began to shake again, subtle at first, then stronger. The vibration followed her. An hour later, she saw lights in the distance, flashing red and blue. Police. Relief flooded through her. She slowed, waving her arm out the window. Two vehicles waded across the road, a white SUV and a government van. Men in high-vis suits stepped out, wearing gas masks. Their headlights painted long shadows across the desert floor. One raised his hand in a calm, practiced motion. She rolled to a stop. "Riley Callahan," he called out. His voice was muffled through the mask. "Yeah. I think something's leaking." "Step out of the vehicle." "Wait, I can explain, it wasn't." "Step out. Now." There was something wrong in his tone. Too flat. Too deliberate. She opened the door slowly, 1 foot hitting the hot asphalt. The man in front tilted his head. "Where is the cargo?" "In the trailer." He glanced to his partner, a silent exchange, then both raised small handheld scanners. The devices clicked once, and both men froze. The readings spiked red. The taller one turned toward her, lowering his mask. The face underneath wasn't human. It was her father's. His eyes glowed faintly yellow, his mouth moving but no words came out, only a deep, hollow breath. Riley screamed and ran. The desert swallowed the sound. Behind her, engines roared to life, the convoy pulling into motion. But their lights didn't stay still, they split and multiplied, appearing in her mirrors like a dozen identical trucks chasing from every direction. All with her father's voice whispering from their radios in perfect unison. "Come back, Rue. You're almost home." She drove until the sun died again, until her body trembled with exhaustion. The mirrors were filled with phantom headlights that vanished whenever she blinked. By the time the highway signs began to blur, she realized she hadn't seen another living thing for hours. Not a bird, not a kangaroo. Not even a cloud. Just the road. And the faint red glow leaking through the seams of her trailer. Part 3, The Hollow Below. The road ran out before dawn. For the last 2 hours, Riley hadn't seen a single kilometer marker or road sign. The asphalt had simply begun to dissolve into packed red dirt, then into endless salt flats stretching toward the horizon. She'd been driving on instinct, following the faint glow bleeding from the seams of the trailer. It pulsed in time with the engine, a slow, steady rhythm like a heartbeat. The clock on the dash was frozen at 2:23 a.m. The same time the voice on the radio had said containment failure. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. Her tongue felt like paper. Every breath tasted faintly metallic, like blood. The Geiger counter had long since fallen silent, its batteries dead, or maybe melted. When she finally saw the coastline, it didn't look real. The land simply ended, a sheer drop into mist and darkness. The Indian Ocean stretched out beyond it, a black mirror under a pale, distant moon. Riley pulled the truck to a stop a few meters from the edge. The tires sank slightly into the crusted salt. The headlights illuminated the void, the beam dissolving into white haze. For a long moment, she just sat there, listening. The engine's low idle echoed through the hollow earth beneath the tires. Then came the knock. Soft, rhythmic. From inside the trailer. 1, 2. Pause. 1, 2, 3. The same cadence she'd heard through the floor of the Euclid Roadhouse. She climbed down from the cab, boots crunching on the crusted salt, air freezing in her lungs. Every instinct screamed to run, to leave the truck, the cargo, the desert, but the sound drew her closer. She unlatched the rear door. The metal was hot to the touch, though the night was bitter cold. She hesitated. Then pulled it open. A wave of red light burst outward, flooding the salt flats. The inside of the trailer was no longer a cargo hold. It was a hollow pit descending into blackness, an impossible depth that shimmered and moved, as if the air itself were liquid. Riley stared down into it, the edges of the pit glowing faintly, veins of red pulsing along the walls like arteries. Something moved far below, a shape, immense and coiled. And then, above the roar of the sea, she heard him. Rue. The voice was clear now. Warm. Familiar. Her father stood at the far edge of the pit, illuminated by the crimson light. He looked exactly as he had the last time she saw him, before the mine collapse took him, before the radio silence. Helmet under his arm. Smile faint and tired. Riley's throat tightened. "You can't be here." "I never left," he said softly. "None of us did." He stepped closer, boots leaving no imprint on the salt. "It's beneath everything, Rue. Beneath the mine, beneath the plane. It's always been there, sleeping." She shook her head, backing away. "You're not real. You brought it this far. You kept it breathing." The ground beneath her feet trembled. Cracks raced outward across the flats, glowing from within. The air pulsed with heat. Riley looked at the ocean. It was boiling, faint red steam curling above the waves. Her father's voice deepened, the warmth draining from it, replaced by something that wasn't human. "You carried its heart in your trailer. And now it wants you to finish the journey." The pit beneath the truck widened, edges crumbling. The rig's rear wheels slid slightly toward it. Riley lunged for the cab door and climbed in, slamming it shut. The radio flickered to life on its own. "You can't drive away from what's under your tires." She jammed the accelerator down. The truck lurched forward, headlights cutting through the haze. The salt plane cracked beneath the weight, fissures glowing red in the mirrors. The road reappeared ahead, though she knew it couldn't. The Nullarbor didn't have turns or rises like that. It was remaking itself in front of her, drawing her onward. For miles, the rig thundered through the empty night, surrounded by fog that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Then, one by one, the miners stepped from the darkness. First a dozen, then dozens more, walking from the dunes, faces hidden behind blackened respirators, carrying chains, drills, lamps that burned with red fire. They didn't move to stop her. They just watched as she drove through them, their bodies fading to dust as the truck passed. Each time one vanished, her radio whispered, "Don't stop. Keep it moving. It must reach the edge." She realized then that the voice wasn't trying to haunt her, it was using her. The uranium wasn't cargo. It was fuel. For whatever was trying to wake beneath the desert. The dashboard began to glow faintly red. The dials spun wildly. Her breath fogged in the cab even though the air burned hot. "Not this time," she whispered. She slammed the gear stick into reverse. The engine screamed, gears grinding, the entire rig shaking violently. Behind her, the ocean churned, rising higher and higher, not water anymore, but a wall of molten sand and light. The miners' voices merged into a single sound, a breathing. Riley hit the brakes, spun the wheel, and sent the truck careening toward the pit. The tires screamed across the salt. The trailer swung sideways, tilting dangerously. She floored the accelerator one last time. The rig plunged forward into the glowing abyss. The explosion lit the Nullarbor like sunrise. Witnesses hundreds of kilometers away, truckers, station hands, surveyors, reported a red light blooming briefly on the horizon, followed by a sound like the sky exhaling. No one found wreckage. No debris. No trace of uranium. Only a single crater, smooth as glass, at the edge of the salt flats. Weeks later, satellite footage revealed something strange. Underneath the crater, seismic scans showed a vast hollow chamber, hundreds of meters deep, pulsing faintly with residual heat. The official explanation blamed a gas explosion from old mining operations. But drivers still whisper. They say on certain nights, when the wind comes off the desert and the moon turns red, you can hear a woman's voice on the CB, faint, calm, repeating the same phrase again and again. "Keep it moving. Don't let it sleep." And out there, on the longest, straightest road in the world, some truckers swear they see her rig still moving through the haze, no driver visible, headlights glowing crimson as it disappears into the dust. Story 3, The Trans-Canada Wendigo. Part 1, The Highway of Tears. Snow fell like ash over the Trans-Canada Highway. Ethan Frost Blackwell had seen a lot of winters, but none like this, a storm that swallowed headlights, erased landmarks, and turned the world into a colorless void. The thermometer on the dash read -38 degrees Celsius. The heater in his rig had died 2 hours ago. He could see his breath fogging the windshield, swirling in the faint light of the dash. He was hauling emergency medical equipment from Prince Rupert to Prince George, a humanitarian run, they called it. A good deed before Christmas. He told himself that was why he'd taken the job. But the truth was simpler, and he couldn't sleep anymore. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. His little sister, Maya. Gone 20 years. Vanished on the same highway when she was 12. They'd searched for weeks before the snow buried everything. They never found her. Locals called this stretch of the Trans-Canada the Highway of Tears. A place where people went missing and no one asked too many questions. Now Ethan was driving straight through it again, alone. The wipers screeched across the ice-glazed windshield. The radio hissed static. The world outside was a blizzard of grey. Then, movement. A shape in the snowdrift ahead, small and white against the darker trees. He slowed, squinting. A girl. She stood barefoot in the center of the road, wearing a white summer dress that fluttered in the wind. Her skin was blue-white, her hair plastered to her face. Ethan leaned on the horn. Nothing. She didn't move. He downshifted, rolling to a stop a few meters away. The engine rumbled low, headlights cutting through the curtain of snow. The girl didn't blink. She just lifted her face to the light. Ethan's pulse pounded. He threw on his hazard lights and climbed down, boots sinking ankle-deep into the snow. The air bit his skin instantly. His beard froze in seconds. "Hey," he called. "You okay?" The girl didn't answer. He took a step closer, and saw that her feet weren't in the snow. They were on it. No footprints. No sinking. The storm went silent around them, like the air itself was listening. Ethan stopped. "You need help?" Her eyes lifted to his, deep black, with no whites at all. Then she smiled. A slow, impossible stretch of her lips that revealed nothing inside. Ethan stumbled backward. The girl's body began to blur, like heat haze on ice. The edges of her form wavered, dissolving into the falling snow. Then she was gone. No trace. No sound. Just a faint ring of burned snow, a perfect black circle where she'd stood. Ethan turned and ran for the cab. He slammed the door, started the engine, and floored the pedal. The tires spun on ice before catching traction. The truck roared forward, fishtailing down the road. In the rearview mirror, the black circle still glowed faintly red, even as the snow buried it. He drove until the storm swallowed the world again. By 4:03 a.m., his hands were shaking too hard to grip the wheel. He pulled over at a turnout marked by a single, frostbitten sign. Rest area, 5 kilometers. He parked by the tree line and cut the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. The cold began creeping in almost instantly. He wrapped himself in his parka and sat there, listening to the ticking of the engine as it cooled. Then came the tap. Soft. Metallic. From the passenger side window. He turned slowly. A handprint was pressed into the frost, 5 fingers splayed wide, palm facing in. It began to melt. He reached for the radio. "MI dispatch, this is Unit 92, come back." Static. Then a faint reply. "Ethan." His stomach turned to ice. That voice. "You still out here, huh?" He gripped the MIC. "Who is this?" "It's me." He didn't breathe. "It's Maya." The voice was soft, trembling, just like he remembered it when she was scared of thunderstorms. "It's so cold, Ethan. I can't feel my hands." He closed his eyes. "You're not real. I'm where you left me." The radio crackled, then went dead. The handprint on the window began to fade. The melting frost dripped down the glass like tears. Then, the sound of hooves on snow. Rhythmic. Heavy. Slow. Ethan turned on the headlights. Nothing but swirling flakes. He opened the door, stepping out with his flashlight. The beam cut across the road, tracks, huge and deep, stretching out of the tree line. But not deer tracks. Each print was shaped like a hand, long fingers ending in sharp grooves. The air grew heavier. The trees creaked. Something was moving just beyond the light. He caught a glimpse of antlers, wide, jagged, black against the snow. Then a pair of eyes. They glowed red. Ethan staggered backward, breath freezing in his throat. The beam of his flashlight trembled across the dark shape emerging from the pines, 7 feet tall, skeletal, skin stretched thin over bones, splayed antlers crowning a head too long, too wrong. Its breath steamed in clouds that melted the snow where they fell. When it spoke, the voice came in his sister's tone. "You left me here." Ethan raised his flare gun and fired. The burst of red light hit the creature's chest, and for an instant, the snow around it turned black and boiled. The creature screamed, a sound that wasn't animal, wasn't human, more like a gale tearing through metal. Then it was gone. The flare burned out, leaving him in darkness again. He stumbled back into the cab, slamming the door and locking it, hands shaking uncontrollably. The temperature in the cab plummeted. Frost spread across the inside of the windshield in veins, spiraling toward him. The headlights dimmed. The battery warning light flickered. He turned the key, nothing. The air inside was so cold his breath crystallized in front of his face. He could hear the tap 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 again, this time from the roof. He looked up. A shadow crawled across the ceiling, slow and deliberate. Then, knock, knock. The same rhythm. He whispered, "Not tonight." Reaching under the seat, he pulled out a road flare and struck it. The cab filled with red light. The tapping stopped. Outside, the snow shifted. Something large moved away into the storm, leaving a trail of steam that lingered in the cold. Ethan sat there until dawn, flare burning low, whispering prayers he'd forgotten the words to. By morning, the storm had passed. The sky was painfully clear, the kind of blue that felt too fragile to touch. He stepped outside, breath rising in small clouds. The air was still. The footprints were gone. The road behind him looked untouched. Except for one thing. A single line of text written across the windshield in frost. "You can't drive from the cold." He stared at it until his fingers went numb. Then he brushed it away, climbed back into the truck, and started the engine. The heater came to life on the first try. For the first time in weeks, he felt warmth. But when he glanced in the mirror, the backseat wasn't empty. A small handprint glowed faintly on the glass behind him, 6 fingers. Part 2, The Frozen Path. The wind never stopped. By the third night, it had carved the snow into sharp ridges that gleamed like broken glass under the headlights. Ethan Frost Blackwell hadn't slept. His eyes were ringed in red, his beard crusted with ice. The heater worked now, but the warmth did nothing for the chill in his bones. He'd been following Highway 16 east for hours, though the road itself was gone, buried beneath drifts that stretched out to the horizon. The GPS blinked no signal. He wasn't sure if he'd passed Prince George or if he was still looping somewhere outside Terrace. The snow made everything the same. His cargo shifted in the trailer behind him, a deep metallic groan like a heartbeat through the chassis. He told himself it was just the road. Just the ice. But sometimes, when the wind dropped for a moment, he thought he heard it breathe. At 4:02 a.m., the radio flickered alive. Unit 92, respond. This is RCMP dispatch out of Hazleton. Ethan grabbed the MIC like a drowning man. This is 92. I'm stuck out near, hell, I don't even know anymore. I need a tow, and something's wrong with my cargo. Copy that. Stay put. We've got you on radar. He exhaled, finally. You're not far from mile marker 187. There's an old ranger station half a click north of the road. Shelter there if you can. Roger that. Moving now. Ethan. His hand froze on the MIC. The voice had changed, the same frequency, the same static, but not the same tone. You remember where we used to go when we were kids? The blood drained from his face. Maya? The lake. The frozen one. You said it would never melt. He dropped the mic. The radio hissed once and went silent. He drove another 10 kilometers before he saw it, a small wooden cabin half buried in snow, a rusted ranger sign barely visible under the drifts. The roof sagged under the weight of ice. The windows were frosted white. He parked the rig beside it, headlights cutting through the storm, and climbed out. The air was razor cold, every breath a knife. The door was unlocked. Inside smelled of wood smoke and dust. He found a lantern, a cot, and a stove still half full of ash. The silence was a living thing, heavy and absolute. He lit the lantern. The light flickered weakly, throwing long shadows across the walls. Then he saw them, marks. Scratched into the wood above the cot. 5 groups of 5. 25 lines. Beside them, scrawled in black marker. Don't listen to the wind. Ethan sat on the cot, pulling his parka tighter. He tried not to think about the words. He failed. The wind outside howled through the cracks like distant voices. He reached for the flask in his pocket, took a swallow, and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, someone was sitting across from him. Maya. Not the little girl he remembered, but older, maybe 20 now. Her face pale, lips blue, hair stiff with frost. Her eyes were wrong, black, glassy, reflecting the lantern light without blinking. You came back, she whispered. He froze, breath caught in his throat. You're not real. She smiled faintly. I waited so long, Ethan. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't move. The air had thickened, heavy as syrup. You left me there, she said, her voice calm, almost kind. The snow took me. It takes everyone who stops. Stop what? Moving. Her smile widened, cracking the skin around her mouth. Her voice deepened, layered with others. You can't stop now. The lantern flickered violently. The shadow stretched along the walls, twisting into shapes that didn't match either of them, tall, antlered, skeletal. Ethan's hand found a flare gun in his coat. He fired. The flare burst against the wall, light flooding the cabin. Maya was gone. The scratches on the wall were still there. But now, beneath them, new words had appeared, burned into the wood by the heat. His following the cold. The next morning, the storm had eased. He packed up what little he had and stepped outside. The world was blinding white under a grey sky. The truck was half buried in snow. But the tracks behind it, his own tire marks, were gone. Something else had replaced them. Hoofprints. They circled the cabin in slow, deliberate loops. The snow around them had melted, leaving black, frozen slush. He climbed into the cab and turned the ignition. It started instantly, too easily. The engine's idle hummed low, steady, rhythmic. He glanced at the gauges, the temperature needle was buried below zero. The windshield began to frost over again, this time from the inside. He wiped it clear with his sleeve, and froze. In the mirror, something stood on the ridge behind him. A silhouette. Too tall. Too still. He couldn't see its face, only the outline, long limbs, antlers catching the dawn light, a trail of mist rising from where it touched the snow. Then it moved. One step. Then another. The engine stuttered, as though reacting to it. The radio hissed softly. Don't run, Ethan. He slammed the truck into gear. The tires spun, found traction, then tore through the snowdrift. The silhouette grew smaller in the mirror, then vanished completely. But the sound didn't stop. The hoofbeats matched his speed. No matter how fast he drove, they stayed behind him, keeping pace. And then, faintly, through the roar of the wind, he heard her again. You shouldn't have burned the forest, Ethan. His grip tightened on the wheel. He hadn't told anyone about that. The summer after Maya vanished, he and two friends had torched the forest clearing where she disappeared, a desperate, drunken attempt to drive out whatever they thought had taken her. The police had called it arson. The elders had called it a curse. He'd called it closure. But as the snow blurred past, he remembered the sound the fire made, the way the smoke had screamed. He'd tried not to think about it for 20 years. "You burned my bones," the voice said. His heart hammered. "You're not her. Then stop pretending you are." The road ahead vanished into a white wall. He saw the shadow at the last second, a massive figure crossing the highway. He yanked the wheel. The truck spun sideways, hit the guardrail, and rolled. The world became sound and glass and screaming steel. Then silence. He woke hanging sideways in the cab, seatbelt half torn. Blood ran from a gash above his eyebrow. Outside, the snowstorm was gone. The air was perfectly still. He crawled out through the shattered windshield and collapsed onto the road. The sky was a dull grey dome, the sun a smudge behind clouds. The truck was on its side, steam rising from the hood. The trailer had split open, scattering its cargo. Medical supplies, they'd said. But what spilled into the snow wasn't medical. It was bones. Hundreds of them. Blackened, twisted, fused together like melted ivory. Ethan stared, mouth dry. Some of the bones had marks carved into them, symbols he recognized from his grandmother's old Cree stories. Protection wards. Against the Wendigo. The cargo hadn't been to help anyone. It had been to bury something. And now it was free. He turned toward the trees. The sound came first, a deep, rasping breath. Then the whisper. "You always drive alone." From the tree line, it stepped into view. The Wendigo. Its antlers scraped the low clouds. Its chest rose and fell slowly, bones creaking with each breath. Frost bloomed in its wake. Ethan stood frozen, flare gun trembling in his hand. "She's gone," it said in his sister's voice. "But I can bring her back." The creature tilted its head, the air shimmering around it like heat. "All you have to do is stop." He aimed the flare. "Not yet." The Wendigo smiled. Its teeth were made of ice. Then it charged. The world went white. Part 3, The Cold That Follows. Silence. When Ethan Frost Blackwell opened his eyes, there was no sound. No wind, no engine, no pulse. Only the faint hiss of snow falling on metal. He was lying on his back beside the wreck, the truck half buried, the trailer split open like a wound in the white earth. Every breath burned his lungs. His clothes were stiff with frost. He tried to move. His body refused. Above him, the sky was a single sheet of grey. The air shimmered faintly, bending the light like water. He turned his head toward the tree line. Something was breathing out there. Slow. Deep. Hungry. The Wendigo hadn't left. It was waiting. He forced himself up, using the truck's side mirror for balance. His reflection stared back, pale skin, cracked lips, eyes rimmed in red. He barely recognized himself. The bones scattered in the snow pulsed faintly beneath a thin crust of ice, like embers refusing to die. They were giving off heat. Steam rose where the flakes touched them. One set caught his eye, a small hand, fused to an adult's rib cage. He stepped closer. His stomach clenched. The hand had 6 fingers. Maya's mark. The same handprint that had followed him since the first night. He whispered, "What did they do to you?" The answer came from everywhere at once. "They fed us to the cold." The voice rolled across the plain, vibrating through the metal of the truck, through his bones. The wind rose suddenly, spiraling the snow into a vortex. Shapes began to form inside it, silhouettes, human, hundreds of them, walking slow circles around the wreck. Each face was the same. Hollow-eyed. Frost-bitten. Lips moving in silent chant. The victims of the highway of tears. All lost. All waiting. Ethan stumbled backward, gripping the flare gun like a cross. You brought them home, the voice said. You carried them across the ice. You carried me. The snow parted. The Wendigo emerged. It moved like a nightmare-given mass, each step bending the air, hoarfrost spreading in cracks beneath its feet. Its antlers shimmered with ice so pure they caught the light like glass. Ethan fired. The flare hit its chest and burst, red light searing across the storm. The creature screamed, body convulsing, but it didn't fall. It leaned forward, light burning through the translucent flesh, and whispered in a voice that was half his, half hers. You can't kill what you become. Ethan froze. What did you say? You've carried my bones, my hunger, my curse. It's in your blood now. He looked down, his skin had begun to pale, frost crystallizing along his arms, crawling toward his chest. He dropped the flare gun and stumbled backward. No. I'm not. You burned me, Maya's voice said, soft, almost kind. Now you'll burn forever. The Wendigo's shadow reached across the snow, swallowing his. The ground beneath them cracked, a deep rumble shaking the plain. Steam rose through the fissures. The air turned white-hot, then plunged to freezing again, the temperature swinging like a pendulum. Ethan's breath came in sharp gasps. Each exhale fogged darker. You left me, she said again. Now stay. The figures in the storm drew closer, dozens of them, circling, their movements jerky, puppet-like. Their eyes glowed with the same red light as the bones. Ethan backed against the truck, reaching for the cab door, but it was frozen shut. He pounded his fist on the glass until his knuckles split. Behind him, the Wendigo's hand reached out, long, bony fingers brushing his shoulder. It was cold enough to burn. In the reflection of the windshield, he saw its face. Not a monster. Himself. Older. Hollowed. Eyes black. Antlers branching from his skull like frostbitten trees. It was always you, the reflection whispered. You've been driving this road for years. He screamed, not in fear, but rage. Then take me. He turned, shoving both hands into the creature's chest. His palms sank through ice and bone. A flood of cold flooded into him, sharp, electric, pure. The world blinked out. When he opened his eyes, the storm was gone. He stood in a clearing under pale morning light. The truck was upright again, clean, untouched. The snow unbroken around it. His breath fogged normally. His hands were warm. No bones. No blood. Just the highway stretching ahead, smooth and black under the new sun. He climbed into the cab, started the engine, and drove. Kilometers rolled by. The forest passed in silence. For the first time in days, he felt calm. Almost human. The radio crackled. Unit 92, do you copy? He smiled faintly. Copy. We've been trying to reach you for days, Frost. Where the hell are you? He looked at the odometer. It was blank. Heading east.